It's the same thing with these lines that we cross. Once you cross them, that is it. And what happens is, in our brains, is that then this thing that you deemed so bad, and then you cross that line, you tried it once, and you were fine that one time, all of a sudden, then it changes your entire outlook. And you say, well, wait a minute. I've either been lied to, or I've been taking this stuff way too serious. Isn't that bad? Teens often can make one bad decision that can lead them down a road that is very hard to not only get off of, but come back from. And I'm in particular talking about drugs and alcohol and going down the road of addiction. So when I remember, as far as I can remember back, is one of actually my earliest memories, I think I was either in kindergarten or first grade. And the teacher did something really, really smart. She got the kids involved and got the parents involved, and they created a contract. And the contract was very cute. It was a little piece of paper, and I think I even still have it somewhere. And it said something along the lines of, I will never smoke in my life. I'll never smoke cigarettes, whatever. But I remember I had to sign it, and my mom had to sign it. And I remember my mom's energy when she was talking about this contract, talking about cigarettes. She was very passionate, and I remember that. She herself smoked when she was in her early 20s, and she had asthma at the same time. She ended up in the hospital more than once. And finally, at some point in her life, she was like, okay, this is super dumb. I'm done with this. And it was a fairly easy stopping procedure. That's not a word. She quit fairly easily. Either way, she was very passionate about this process, and she looked at me just very seriously, like, Kevin, this is very serious. Once you sign this contract, you will never, ever, ever touch a cigarette, even think about smoking. And she just kind of went into some of the dangers and how bad they can be and how addicting can be. And it's really, really interesting because to this day, I am 36, almost 37 years old. I have never, ever took one single drag of a cigarette. Now, with that being said, I'm not like this super clean person. Okay. I obviously I casually drink. I'll have a glass of wine or two on the weekend or whatever. And even that, I'm waking up with headaches because that's what happens when you get old. And, I have, when I was in high school, I tried weed a couple of times and that was pretty much, not in high school, in college. And the other reason I'm kind of going down this road with this story today is because I'm thinking about some of the people in my life that are not necessarily close, but they're kind of a distant family members that I'm not super close with. But I look at some people that I know who are very, very addicted to all sorts of drugs. And they are, I wish them all the best because last time I saw them, this person was very sweet and really wanted to get clean. And it's such an important conversation with teens. And there has been so many different avenues and different pushes and different incentives and different things that people and organizations have tried and continue to try to teach the students today the dangers of drugs, alcohol, vaping, whatever comes next. And I think about this contract so much because to this day, never smoked a cigarette. It's just specifically cigarettes. I mean, I'll have a couple of cigars within the year. Like I'll it's it's not necessarily like I'm this perfectly clean, body and spirit, right? It's this thing with cigarettes. And I think what it was this tangible asset, this little rinky-dink piece of paper that, objectively meant nothing. But the way my teacher, the way my mother handled it, it was like signing my life away. Like this was it. This was serious stuff. Your first contract. And I just always remember that. And I got to tell you, I don't think there hasn't been that many times where I've been presented with, hey, do you want a cigarette? Like I remember a couple of times, and it just kicked right in. And it wasn't even like I remembered the contract. I had this like existential crisis. Oh my God. It was more like,
I don't have to tell you, students today are way too stressed, overwhelmed, and anxious about their lives and their futures. This is why I do what I do. As a youth speaker, I teach students to step back from the situation, see the choices they have in front of them, make great decisions, and build positive patterns around this process. Whether it's substance abuse, bullying, or stress about their digital lives, the students I've worked with have had some great success. So I want to work with your students. I want to come down to your school and your event and actually teach your students the art and the science of making great decisions. So click the link below and schedule your call with me so I can learn a little bit more about what you're looking for in your next speaker.
like, I have nothing for cigarettes. I don't know. I just have nothing for them. There's nothing about it that intrigues me. And I think the reason that was because it was done at such a young age. I was so young when my mother and my teacher did this for me. And that rooted in my subconscious that I am a person that will never smoke cigarettes. I signed this contract. I can't do it. And did you notice what I just did there? I put an identity. I changed my identity to someone who is not a smoker. It is very easy or smoking cigarettes. It's very easy for me to say, I never will smoke cigarettes because I'm not a person who smokes cigarettes. And that has been transformed because of the fact that I think this very young age, this silly little contract was made, very seriously and well done. So there's the first point to this story is that the identity that these teenagers have about themselves is huge. Are they a person that is going through life and just kind of letting life come at them? I'm sure there's many of them out there like that because of many different circumstances, but whether it be parents, whether it be living environment, whether it be zip code, whatever it is, there's many different reasons. But I mean, I myself was so lucky that I had a mother like that who could instill these identities and philosophies in me. And I think that's number one. If we can help our students identify or create an identity for them that says, I'm a person that will never smoke cigarettes, will never drink, will never do drugs, like whatever that is. Then obviously the next question is, how do we do that? Now, for me, there was this line. I remember it very distinctly because even in my head growing up, there was all these different lines to cross, right? And I knew at a young age, not necessarily kindergarten or first grade, but like by middle school, I kind of knew, okay, here's how this works. There's alcohol, right? Because stores sell it. It's socially acceptable to drink in all different social engagements. So there's alcohol. One day I'll probably try alcohol whenever that happens. And then the next bad thing, air quotes, is cigarettes. Never ever try that. And then what happened was after cigarettes, I put in a big bucket all other drugs. Now I knew about weed, but I was too young to really know different types of drugs and different their different side effects and mental states and all that stuff. But I had these lines, and I knew eventually in my mind that I would cross the alcohol line. That was my identity. I told myself, not maybe consciously, but subconsciously, that, well, I see other people, my adult. Actually, my mother really never drank, but I see my stepdad having a beer every once in a while. My father drinks every once in a while, just like randomly, parties, adults drinking. So I'm like, in my mind, at some point, I'll drink. And that's why when I was in, I want to say, 10th grade, was it 10th grade or 9th grade? Either 9th or 10th grade, end of 9th grade, beginning of 10th grade, whatever it was when I had my first beer, right? But that could be a little bit earlier than most kids. I think I was definitely on the early side because that was my identity. I knew it was okay to cross that line. Now, as I got older, throughout high school, it still had the same bucket scenario where you cross the first line was alcohol, going into the next line was cigarettes, so I never could do. So then that meant linearly, I could never do any other drugs. So I was set, fine. And then in college was when I started to look at things differently and say, well, I'm still never going to smoke cigarettes because I just don't have any desire to. But this stuff, like, I'll try weed. I'll try that a couple times. And I did. And it was whatever. It was, I never really, it wasn't something I got hooked on. I tried a couple times and that was it. And it just was kind of, it was fine, whatever. It didn't really hit home for me. Okay. But then I had that other line. I put marijuana in its own bucket. And then the rest of all the other drugs was in a bucket that still to this day is something that I will never, ever think about crossing. And I think it's really, really, really important for this second scenario that I'm kind of laying out here is to somehow work with your students and your children to understand that there's lines that you do not cross. And you and your kid have to come up with those lines yourself. I know a friend of mine who has never told me why, but does not drink. Now, I'm pretty sure he doesn't do any other drugs too. I would be very surprised, but he does not drink alcohol one bit. And when I was in college, I just couldn't understand it. Like, yo, bro, come on, just have it's a one beer. What? And he's like, no, I'm good, thanks, man. And I tried to ask him why. He would never tell me why. And now I look back on that, and that was extremely rude and immature and disgusting that I would push that. But he knew that I was fairly, I wasn't really pushing it, but I was just genuinely very curious. Either way, it is a line that he wouldn't cross. If you're familiar with Matt Bellis, I had on the show quite a few episodes ago. I'll link it over here. Matt is he is a proponent of natural highs. His entire speaking program is based on his work as a clinical psychologist, and he teaches students how to avoid drugs and alcohol entirely and go for a natural high. Do an ice bath, go skydiving or whatever it is, and it's just really fascinating. So I think a couple of things when you think about trying to help students avoid drugs and alcohol and avoiding that first decision, because once you cross that line, what happens is that barrier is broken and you can never put it back, because it's like a sheet of glass. Once you break the glass, it'll fall into 1,000 pieces. You're never going to be able to put it back together, ever. Unless you do whatever crazy stuff, melting, I don't know. But you can never put that glass back together. It's the same thing with these lines that we cross. Once you cross them, that is it. And what happens is, in our brains, is that then this thing that you deemed so bad, and then you cross that line, you tried it once, and you were fine that one time, all of a sudden, then it changes your entire outlook. And you say, well, wait a minute. I've either been lied to or I've been taking this stuff way too serious. It's not that bad. And then you go down further roads, and this is where you could slip into addiction. Now, understand this whole conversation. Clearly, you could probably tell I am not an expert in addiction. I am not an expert in drug and alcohol prevention at all. This is just one man's experience who is lucky enough to have had a mother who has instilled great philosophies in his life, I don't know if that's a word, a great purpose and a great value systems in his life, as well as someone who is not necessarily that much of an addictive behavior. At the same time, I can understand what it's like to go down an addictive road if you have an addictive nature to you, not necessarily clinically addictive or addicted to something, but have that addictive nature where, you know, you just really want to either get to that thing or accomplish that goal or land that trick on a skateboard, whatever it is, really pushing to make that happen. And then once you do, you want more of that, because it's the whole neurochemical game that's going on in your mind, the dopamine chasing, if you will. So again, just to recap, as I complete my little rambling story here. Number one, instill the identity in your kids. We have to teach them how to develop their own identity and what that means to them and what that sounds like to them. And number two, we have to try to tangibly help them create lines and buckets in their life and have them decide out loud, consciously, what line they will never cross. That's up to you to decide. That's up to them to decide. I'm not here to impart my belief systems on you. So that's my 2 cents today on drugs and alcohol. And the reason, again, I've decided to talk about this today is because I've been thinking about some of the people that I know who are in such a bad place in their lives. And I just wonder if they were able to have someone at a much younger age in their life help them with their identity, help them with their mission and their value system, and help them create buckets and create lines that they will not cross. And maybe they wouldn't have made that first decision or that second or that third or that 300, whatever. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you like it, then let me know by hitting like, hitting subscribe, hitting the bell notification to be notified every time I release a new video. And if you like today's episode, then you're definitely going to like my conversation with Matt Bellis right over here.